Priya and Robert seemed like an ordinary family from the outside, but beneath the surface, their lives were anything but normal. Priya, a young bride from India, had moved to Australia full of hope, while Robert, her father-in-law, carried an image of respect and authority in the neighborhood. No one suspected the dangerous secret that was brewing between them, a forbidden connection that would shatter trust, unravel a family, and lead to a shocking double murder. In the quiet suburban streets where neighbors thought they knew the story, lies, obsession, and betrayal were quietly escalating, building toward a moment of violence that would leave the entire community reeling. The young Indian bride arrived in Australia full of hope and excitement, believing that her marriage would bring her happiness and security. She stepped into a world that was completely foreign to her, with wide streets, modern houses, and neighbors who seemed polite but distant. Her husband, a man she had met only briefly before their wedding, was charming and attentive in public, but at home, he was often absorbed in work and social obligations. The vast house, with its polished floors and immaculate gardens, felt cold and unwelcoming. Loneliness began to settle over her like a heavy fog, and she found herself wandering the empty rooms at night, longing for someone to confide in, someone to understand her. In those quiet hours, she noticed her father-in-law, a man who carried authority and respect in the family, paying her unexpected attention. What started as casual conversation soon became frequent visits to her room under the guise of concern and guidance. He listened to her problems, offering comfort that she hadn't realized she craved, slowly filling the emotional void left by her absent husband. The attention made her feel special, seen in ways she hadn't experienced before. Unbeknownst to anyone else, these interactions began to blur the boundaries of family relationships. The father-in-law, with his charm and persuasive words, subtly drew her closer, planting seeds of dependency and trust. She felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration at the secrecy, knowing that even the smallest slip could unravel everything. Meanwhile, the household continued its routines, oblivious to the growing tension. The community saw only a picture-perfect family, but behind the locked doors, a dangerous and forbidden connection was taking root, quietly preparing the stage for events that would soon shatter lives and reveal the dark consequences of hidden desires. The secret connection between the bride and her father-in-law grew stronger, each encounter more intense than the last. They met in quiet corners of the house, in rooms where no one else could see, exchanging glances and small gestures that no one would suspect. What began as emotional support slowly transformed into something far more dangerous. The father-in-law, aware of the power he held over her, began to manipulate her feelings, making her believe that only he could understand her struggles in a way no one else could. She found herself drawn to him, torn between guilt and desire, unable to resist the magnetic pull of a forbidden relationship. The secrecy added an intoxicating thrill, each moment together charged with tension and danger. The household around them carried on as normal, completely unaware that their lives were quietly unraveling. The young bride learned to hide messages, erase evidence, and act as if everything were normal, while the father-in-law became increasingly controlling, ensuring that no one discovered the truth. Their affair, though hidden, left subtle traces that only a careful observer might notice. A misplaced item, a door left slightly ajar, the faintest hint of something unusual in the routine of daily life. As days passed, the intensity of their relationship grew, but so did the risk. Both knew that if the secret were exposed, the consequences could be devastating. Despite this, the bond continued to strengthen, fueled by loneliness, obsession, and a mutual desire to keep the affair hidden at all costs. The tension in the house became palpable, a silent force pressing down on every interaction. What had started as a quiet friendship had become a dangerous dance, a game of trust and deception that would soon spiral out of control, setting the stage for violence and tragedy that no one could have foreseen. Tension in the house began to manifest in ways that could no longer be ignored. Small incidents, seemingly trivial at first, hinted at a growing unrest. Items disappeared or were moved to unexpected places. Doors that were usually locked were left ajar, and the atmosphere carried a quiet but undeniable unease. Neighbors started noticing strange activity, cars arriving and leaving at odd hours, shadows moving behind curtains, and an unsettling silence that replaced the usual warmth of the family home. The young bride, already entangled in the secret affair, became increasingly anxious. She struggled to maintain appearances, carefully navigating her days to avoid suspicion. Every interaction with her husband felt tense, as if a storm were silently gathering beneath the surface of their ordinary routine. Meanwhile, the father-in-law grew bolder, no longer content with brief moments of secrecy. He found ways to manipulate the household, creating distractions and excuses to cover their encounters. The emotional intensity between them escalated, and the lines between loyalty, fear, and desire began to blur. Every touch, every whisper carried the weight of consequences too severe to imagine. Yet, despite the risk, neither could stop the cycle. The tension became a quiet undercurrent that influenced everyone in the home, even those unaware of the affair. Friends and extended family visiting the house sensed a subtle strain, though they could not identify its source. The house itself seemed to take on a life of its own, its quiet corridors and empty rooms echoing the secrets being kept inside. It was as if the very walls were witnesses to a growing danger, watching as the young bride and her father-in-law moved closer to a breaking point. With each passing day, the danger escalated, and the household continued its routine, unaware that the carefully maintained illusion of normalcy was about to shatter in the most horrifying way imaginable. The night of the confrontation arrived like a storm that had been brewing for weeks. A seemingly small misunderstanding ignited a chain reaction of anger and suspicion. The husband, finally noticing inconsistencies and strange behavior, confronted the father-in-law in a tense, heated exchange that quickly escalated beyond words. The father-in-law, desperate to protect his secret, became aggressive, his frustration and fear merging into a dangerous resolve. The young bride, caught in the middle, tried to calm the situation, but her attempts only fueled the chaos. Emotions ran high, and control slipped away from all three. What began as a verbal clash transformed into a violent struggle, as years of hidden tension and suppressed feelings erupted in the confined space of the house. Furniture was overturned, glass shattered, and the atmosphere became thick with anger and panic. In a moment of horrifying impulsivity, the father-in-law made a decision that would forever alter the lives of everyone involved. The violence claimed both his son and the young bride's husband, leaving the home silent except for the echo of what had just occurred. Outside, the neighborhood remained unaware, still believing the family to be safe and ordinary, while inside, tragedy had struck with unimaginable intensity. The aftermath was chaotic and immediate, with the bride frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the reality of what had just happened. Her secret, once hidden, had now manifested in the most extreme and irreversible way. Police were alerted, neighbors gathered, and a wave of disbelief swept through the community. Investigators arriving at the scene would later describe it as one of the most shocking crimes they had encountered, a violent culmination of secrecy, obsession, and forbidden desire. The quiet house that once symbolized wealth and stability had become a chamber of horror, setting the stage for a gripping investigation and an unraveling of dark truths that would captivate. The morning after the murders, the neighborhood was stunned into silence. Police officers arrived quickly, their sirens piercing the quiet streets, but no one could have prepared for the scene inside the house. The once orderly rooms were now marked by chaos and signs of struggle. Investigators moved carefully, documenting every detail, from the overturned furniture to the traces of blood that told a story of rage and desperation. The young bride, still in shock, became the focus of intense scrutiny. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, reflected a mixture of fear, guilt, and confusion as officers questioned her about the events of the previous night. As authorities pieced together the timeline, it became clear that the double murder was not a random act of violence, but the horrific climax of months of secrecy and manipulation. News of the tragedy spread rapidly through the community, leaving neighbors horrified and family members struggling to comprehend how a seemingly ordinary household could descend into such darkness. The media seized upon the story, sensationalizing the hidden affair and the shocking deaths, while friends and relatives struggled to reconcile the image of the family they knew with the violent reality. Investigators discovered evidence of the illicit relationship between the bride and her father-in-law, including secret messages, hidden notes, and signs of frequent clandestine meetings. Each revelation deepened the complexity of the case and shocked everyone who had believed they understood the family dynamic. The community grappled with questions of morality, trust, and betrayal, realizing that the outward appearance of normalcy had concealed a dangerous web of obsession and deceit. What had seemed like a quiet suburban life had been hiding a deadly secret, and the aftermath of the murders served as a chilling reminder of how hidden desires and unaddressed tensions can erupt with devastating consequences. As the investigation unfolded, shocking revelations began to emerge, exposing the dark personalities behind the tragedy. Detectives delved into the lives of the father-in-law and the bride, uncovering layers of manipulation, control, and vulnerability that had gone unnoticed. The father-in-law, outwardly respected and admired in the community, had a history of domineering behavior and a tendency to bend others to his will. The young bride, still grappling with isolation in a foreign country, had been drawn into his orbit, her loneliness making her susceptible to his influence. Forensic experts examined the crime scene with meticulous attention, uncovering details that suggested careful planning rather than a sudden, uncontrolled outburst. Hidden messages, secret rendezvous locations, and a pattern of deceit revealed a relationship that had been cultivated over time, driven by obsession and secrecy. Evidence suggested that both parties had made choices they believed were necessary to protect themselves, yet the consequences proved catastrophic. Interviews with neighbors and family members painted a portrait of a household where fear and tension had been simmering beneath a facade of normalcy. The more the investigators uncovered, the clearer it became that the double murder was the inevitable outcome of a toxic combination of desire, control, and deception. The community, previously shocked by the violence itself, became increasingly fascinated by the intricate web of lies and betrayal that had led to it. Media coverage emphasized the forbidden nature of the affair, highlighting the moral complexities and psychological manipulation involved. Every new revelation seemed more unbelievable than the last, as the hidden dynamics of the family were slowly laid bare. The story became a case study in how secrecy, obsession, and unaddressed emotional turmoil can escalate into devastating consequences, leaving destruction and heartbreak in their wake. As the investigation unfolded, shocking revelations began to emerge, exposing the dark personalities behind the tragedy. Detectives delved into the lives of the father-in-law and the bride, uncovering layers of manipulation, control, and vulnerability that had gone unnoticed. The father-in-law, outwardly respected and admired in the community, had a history of domineering behavior and a tendency to bend others to his will. The young bride, still grappling with isolation in a foreign country, had been drawn into his orbit, her loneliness making her susceptible to his influence. Forensic experts examined the crime scene with meticulous attention, uncovering details that suggested careful planning rather than a sudden, uncontrolled outburst. Hidden messages, secret rendezvous locations, and a pattern of deceit revealed a relationship that had been cultivated over time, driven by obsession and secrecy. Evidence suggested that both parties had made choices they believed were necessary to protect themselves, yet the consequences proved catastrophic. Interviews with neighbors and family members painted a portrait of a household where fear and tension had been simmering beneath a facade of normalcy. The more the investigators uncovered, the clearer it became that the double murder was the inevitable outcome of a toxic combination of desire, control, and deception. The community, previously shocked by the violence itself, became increasingly fascinated by the intricate web of lies and betrayal that had led to it. Media coverage emphasized the forbidden nature of the affair, highlighting the moral complexities and psychological manipulation involved. Every new revelation seemed more unbelievable than the last, as the hidden dynamics of the family were slowly laid bare. The story became a case study in how secrecy, obsession, and unaddressed emotional turmoil can escalate into devastating consequences, leaving destruction and heartbreak in their wake. The trial became one of the most sensational cases the community had ever witnessed, drawing crowds, media attention, and intense public scrutiny. Courtrooms were packed as prosecutors presented a chilling account of the events leading up to the murders. Every detail of the illicit affair was laid bare, from secret messages and hidden meetings to the psychological manipulation that had gripped the young bride. Witnesses described subtle but alarming behaviors, revealing how the father-in-law had exerted control over her and how the bride had struggled with fear, desire, and isolation. The prosecution argued that the double murder was the inevitable outcome of months of secrecy, obsession, and escalating tension. Defense lawyers painted a more complex picture, emphasizing the emotional vulnerability of the bride and the controlling influence of her father-in-law, seeking to shift some of the blame for the shocking violence. The public was captivated by the intricate dynamics of the family, fascinated by the combination of forbidden desire, betrayal, and the explosive consequences that had resulted. Experts were called to testify about manipulation, psychological control, and the warning signs of toxic relationships, adding depth to the understanding of how ordinary people could be driven to commit such horrific acts. The courtroom became a stage for human emotions laid bare, revealing layers of fear, regret, and anger. Every revelation seemed to push the boundaries of what the public believed was possible in a suburban household. As the trial progressed, the community grappled with moral and ethical questions, debating responsibility, accountability, and the role of secrecy in creating dangerous situations. By the time the verdict approached, it was clear that the case had left a lasting mark, not only on the family, but on everyone who had followed the story, transforming a private tragedy into a public lesson about obsession, betrayal, and the unpredictable.